Welcome to the acclaimed podcast, The Deep Dive, featuring your esteemed hosts, Andy Monitor and Drew Dinzik, powered by BetSperts.
Welcome to The Deep Dive. Andy, we got two divisions left, but it is an annual tradition of ours as we are on the eve of the NFL regular season kickoff to reach out to some of the smartest minds that we know across the football handicapping space and get their temperature on sort of the macro topics, macro themes that surround the NFL handicapping community. And this is a special episode. It's an episode I look forward to every year. We bring on one of our first ever NFL guest on the deep dive. And I think this is probably our most frequent guest. This is, I think, his eighth time.
Modal.
Highest mode.
Highest mode.
Yep, that's right. And you know what else? Also, our most requested guest. I get questions every year of when is Suma coming on?
Especially from the female handicappers. They ask for that.
Oh, they all want to know.
The accent. Girls love an accent.
When is the 60 Sherman coming on? So without further ado, welcome back to the deep dive, Mr. Fabian Sommer.
Hey guys, what an intro. Thanks for having me. I was looking forward to it as well. Basically all spring, all summer, and now we are almost back.
And yeah, you can see that on the if you're listening in podcast form, it is at SUUMA810 on Twitter. I was telling somebody who was unfamiliar about the story of probably your first appearance, where he said, "Hey, people, Suma, where can people find you on Twitter?" And you said, SWMA810, and we had to tell you, like, hey buddy, that doesn't fly in English. Like, W means something else. You can't do that. People aren't going to find you. So it's 2 U's in a row. That one still always cracks me up.
Yeah, and without question, still the sharpest guy that I know in the football handicapping space. And we are recording this on the right on the heels of covering the most interesting division in the NFL, the AFC North. Hopefully you have not had a chance to listen to our breakdowns yet, and we can get a completely an unaffected, an unbiased take from you on how the AFC North is going to shape up this year. And I kind of want to start there before we get into sort of the bigger picture stuff. What's your temperature on the AFC North right now? Because I think it's different than ours, or at least different than mine. Maybe Andy's kind of in the middle. But where do you stand as we get ready to kick off the AFC North?
So I think that it's going to be a very exciting division as long as Joe Burrow can somehow stay mobile in the pocket, and maybe Big Ben is not on the biggest decline ever. However, I pretty heavily lean towards the Ravens as the clear number one in the division. And I don't think that this is a consensus opinion, because over the summer I've read a lot about the Brownies, which is completely fair. And I think that the Browns, at least for a couple of weeks, were the favorite to win the division. Maybe they still are. I don't really know right now, but I think that there was a point, like in May or in April, where the Browns were the favorite to win the AFC North, which I disagreed with. But I think that we are sleeping on the Ravens, and I don't really think enough.
What are some of the positives that you see for the Ravens that you think people are missing? Because this is a good rebuttal on the heels.
We just hit on when we went into it last night, we said, like, we went over the 2020 season, and then we did, the Browns. We said, here's what the Browns needed to fix, and that they worked on their secondary. And then we got to the Ravens, and we had a few more question marks about what they needed to fix. And I guess that would be the biggest question is, how do you see the Baltimore Ravens passing game improving from last year, or even, and I think it probably was almost a little bit declined from the previous year. How do you see it getting past, that level and still maintaining the identity that they created with Lamar being such a dynamic runner as well?
Well, I think that there are two components. One is that they added Sammy Watkins and Rashad Bateman. I think Bateman, he was touted as maybe the most polished route runner in the draft. And that's basically exactly what the Ravens were lacking last year. They were just lacking someone who can win one-on-one on the outside, get open on some quick outs, speed outs, and stuff like that. And on the other side, Sammy Watkins in that typical wide receiver 2 role is also an upgrade. And it also allows Marquise Brown to do some stuff over the top, get his speed going, because I don't think that they really were able to unleash him properly last year because they just didn't have any other outside threats. And Mark Andrews is slated for a bounce back season. He was dealing with some drops. And then we get to the offensive line. I mean, Ronnie Stanley tore his ACL, I think, in week 8 or 9 against Pittsburgh. They added Kevin Zeitler. They have been playing with a new center since, I think, week 10 or 11 last week. So I think that they have upgraded their receiving corps. They have upgraded their offensive line. And it can only go up, in my opinion.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
I mean, it's where we landed. We just weren't so sure about it all happening. And that's where we land with every team. It's like, here's the things that need to happen. And then you've got to set probabilities to each of those things happening. Like Minnesota was a good example of like, Minnesota has a super high ceiling, but it needs literally like 6 different things to all work out. And a couple of them were, lower probabilities. And the more pieces you add like that, where like, Kirk Cousins need to have his best season ever. Plus, Kirk Cousins can't miss any games for COVID. Plus the defense has to be much improved with the younger cornerbacks. Plus, Daniil Hunter in the pass rush has to work. Plus, this offensive line, it just all those things could happen. But once you start setting probabilities to them and you add 6 of them together, it's like, yeah, Minnesota has a high ceiling, but it's like a 5% chance that they get there. Whereas like Baltimore, I think when you start throwing better coaching staffs and better culture, overall culture of a team, you can start adding some percentage points to some of those things happening.
And
Yeah,
also,
and
I would argue that, I would argue that Baltimore has a very high floor just because they have such a great rushing attack. And last year, I think from, let's say, week 4 to week 12, they ranked like 27th or 25th in EPA per dropback. And then they had like that crazy stretch to finish the season where they went 5-0. And let's just say that they stay a top 5 rushing attack, which is probably entirely reasonable. I don't see any other reasons why we should assume they will not be a top-notch rushing attack next season. And let's just say that their passing attack over a 17 game season, man. Let's say they have like the 12th or 14th best passing attack. Combine that with a pretty good defense that doesn't miss any beat. In my opinion, that's a pretty good team.
Fair enough. One of the benefits or one of the beauties of having had you on so many times over the years is that we have some historical context to kind of look back on. And one of the fun podcasts that we did with you a million years ago, it feels like now, was pre-2018 NFL draft. What will end up becoming an extremely consequential draft for a lot of franchises, and particularly the AFC. That was, of course, the draft that the Browns ended up with Baker Mayfield, the Bills ended up with Josh Allen, and the Ravens ended up with Lamar Jackson. Now,
and to be fair, Josh Rosen has been on a couple AFC teams now, I think, at this point. What is it? At least one, because he was with Miami, I think. Yeah, I think he's been on like 5 teams, man.
Yeah, didn't work out in Miami. That's okay though. They don't all hit. What I remember though from 2018, you were pretty high on Baker Mayfield coming into the NFL, and he hasn't really disappointed, I don't think, through 3 seasons here. What is your temperature on Mayfield as we head into this 2021 season where he has, really, like, there's not going to be any excuses this year if it doesn't work out for him, between the coaching staff, what they put around him in terms of weapons, the strength of the offensive line, and now a good defense. Like, if it doesn't work out for Mayfield this year, you probably can't give him the bag. What is your expectation heading into 2021 for Baker?
Yeah, so I think Baker had his up and downs, and to be fair, he was also thrown into some really bad situations with Hugh Jackson, Freddie Kitchens in that head coaching year where I just didn't know what to do with his play sheet. where they called some sick draw on 4th and 10 and stuff like that. So I think that Baker was not in a great situation overall in Cleveland, and that completely switched when Kevin Stefanski took over. And I think that over 3 years, we have a pretty good sample size. Yes, he's not the most consistent passer, but I think that he has all the tools to execute a well-designed offense. He will not be that Russell Wilson, maybe Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes type of guy who maybe can elevate a middling offense or middling personnel. But I think that he's now in the perfect situation where he can play like a borderline top 10 passer. And I think when you combine all that with the coaching staff, with the probably number one offensive line, Odell Beckham coming back. Yes, best offensive line. Odell Beckham coming back. They're also pretty deep at wide receiver right now because Odell, Jarvis Landry, and then they have guys like Donovan People-Jones and Rashad Higgins playing that wide receiver 3 and 4th spot. I think they're pretty loaded, and I think that as long as Baker can play like a borderline top 10, borderline top 12 passing quarterback, this is a perfect situation for the Browns. And I'm not expecting like an elite passing attack or an elite offense overall, but I think they were 6th in EPA per play last year, and we have to consider that they were playing without Odell Beckham for like 10 weeks, and they had 3 games with like 40 miles per hour of wind against the Raiders, Texans, and the Eagles, where their passing attack was basically non-existent because you just couldn't throw the ball. And then they had that one game against the Jets where they were playing without any wide receiver. So I think that 6th ranking in EPA per play might still be a little bit undervalued or underrated, and we should see that offense, in my opinion, as a top 5 offense overall, where Baker Mayfield doesn't have to be Captain America. He just has to execute that offense. It's well designed, and I think that will also lead to a pretty solid contract for him next year.
We gave him some credit for that too. We said, the missing player game, the wind games, the injuries. We said, like, I think we even said, like, this team might have, under normal circumstances, might have won like 13, 14 games. They had some really odd happenings, and you're right. Like, Baker Mayfield's probably never going to be a top 5 quarterback, but the way this roster's put together with that coach, and we talked about this a bunch, and I think what you said kind of solidified my thoughts. It's like a sum of the parts team. Like, it's going to be just so many of the important things are like a quarterback who is capable behind a very good offensive line, enough receivers that aren't going to drop the ball, and a good defense with a coach who knows what he's doing. Like, some of the parts put you near the top of the top of the teams in your continent, a very tough conference. And it'll be interesting. Maybe they have another month of win. You never know. Like, shit can happen. It's going to be a whole and then we it's funny. We spent like an hour and 45 minutes of this division. Now we're just, I don't know. Is it our favorite division now? We really spent some time on the Browns last night, and I had a lot of fun talking about them. I'm having fun again, but we did want to talk some process a little too. And I got to thinking about that when we brought up the Vikings. I don't know. Maybe I'll let Drew phrase it, the home field, just because we did see, I've seen a couple people tweet using the Vikings as a good example of home field, as far as, just how well they've played in that new stadium at home, not only winning, but against the spread. And the fact that we didn't have fans, were knock on wood. Like, I don't know what's going to happen. Shit could get real again and we could cut down, but let's assume that we'll be back to like some normalcy of having fans. You have the home field advantage when the opposing offense is on the field, or especially when they're down near one or the other ends, and then the home field effect on the referees. I don't know where you stand on some of that going into this year.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess maybe the right way to phrase it is home field advantage was dying before the pandemic.
Yeah,
it was dying.
Road field.
We had the ongoing joke about road field advantage pre-pandemic, and then you took away the crowd noise, and all of a sudden road teams were scoring at an impressive clip, on top of the fact that there wasn't a huge referee induced help. They weren't getting help from the refereeing, on top of now there was no impact of the crowd noise. It's fair to assume that there will be some regression towards the home teams this season, but I'm certainly not going into this season assuming that it's anywhere close to historical average. I think some of the regression we saw in 2019 is still real. Do you approach home field advantage any differently this year than you would have 2 years ago?
Not really. I personally, I will land somewhere between 2018 and 2020. When we look at the past couple of years, there was a great article, Bayesian analysis of home advantage in North American professional sports before and during COVID-19, and they did a great job basically calculating estimated home field advantage, where they also consider the strength of the opposing team. And you can pretty well see that home field advantage has been declining before 2019. Then we had that crazy outlier season in 2019, where road teams were performing, I think, even slightly better than home teams. And then last year we had that tiny regression, and they were dealing with empty stadiums and stuff like that. And I thought all off season about why home field advantage is declining in the NFL, even though I don't expect it to be on that 2019 or 2020 level. And I came up with some subjective reasoning. I think that first of all, it's noise. So what we saw in 2019 and 2020, there's probably a decent part just noise, because we are dealing with so small sample sizes. And on the other side, I think that the game of football in the NFL has evolved in the sense that coaching staffs and offensive coordinators are consistently finding better ways to make it easier for the quarterback, especially for young and inexperienced or bad quarterbacks. Because imagine like 5-6 years ago, the teams were pounding their running backs on early downs, and the arguably worst situation a quarterback could be in was facing 3rd and 8 on the road against a loud crowd, where he was not very experienced. He had to call audibles and stuff like that. We were dealing with some false starts from the offensive line. And those were really tough situations for quarterbacks. And since 2016, we had motion rate increased by like 20 percentage points over 4 years. We have play action rates going up. And I think that stuff using motion, indicating is the defense playing zone? Are they playing man? Can we get a clue about safety rotations, maybe pre-snap already? And I think that makes it extremely easier for every quarterback in general. And that might close the gap a little bit for the bad and the inexperienced quarterbacks. So I cannot really prove it. I cannot quantify that, but that's a, let's say, subjective reason for me to assume that home field advantage won't be back to all standards in the future.
Let me throw a hypothesis out there, and you guys call bullshit or tell me that there's legs to this.
Well, I'm going to.
There was an absolute explosion of scoring at the beginning of last year, and people assumed that it was because there was no noise and communication was better, and especially early in the season when there was no weather. There's no noise, no crowd noise. Like all of a sudden you had offenses clicking and performing at efficiencies that seemed impossible. That we saw this in basketball too, by the way. This wasn't just football. For sure in the NBA, this was a thing. Now that you reintroduce crowd noise, could this impact totals more than home field advantage? Or could you have young offensive linemen who were previously they were at an advantage because they knew the snap count better. There was communication was better. They were getting on, on the road. They were getting off their, getting out of their stance quicker. Whereas now, you reintroduce noise, you have potential for more offensive holding, potential for more kind of just some general, bog down the offense, false starts, like the offensive attrition from a penalty standpoint, and that the general effect we may see from the reintroducing crowds is less, we're back to 2.5, 3 points of home field advantage on average, and scoring is more like 2018 now. Does that hold any weight whatsoever? Andy, I'll let you butt first.
Well, no, and I'll probably just redirect to Suma, and I'll follow up with after what he says. But I wanted to add to that too is I don't think we were on the fan boat I think we were on the, oh my God, they're not going to call holding for anything.
Yeah, right.
Now. Like
right.
I think right away we pivoted to like, yeah, fans certainly, again, hard to quantify something like that. Like Suma said, it is a little more subjective, but it's one of those subjective, unquantifiable things that you know is true. Like for sure, being quiet and be able to communicate with your offense easier is going to be better for offense. By how much we don't know, but the holding, I mean, it was painfully apparent, like how they were calling holding and then pass interference on both sides of the ball. It's like, oh my God, they want 60, 70 points a game all of a sudden. It just felt that way. And I mean, people did kind of flesh out that. I think Pizzola put some numbers to that right away and said, like, here's actual empirical evidence showing like offensive holding's not getting called very much. And I mean, how we don't talk about that because everyone wants to bring up the fumble going through the end zone, which we brought up yesterday, is the ultimate penalty, really. But like pass interference on defense being a spot foul is the most penal in maybe all of sports outside of a red card in soccer. But really a 10-yard penalty on first down really puts you so far behind the sticks because then it
auto
like,
punch.
If you talk about like what makes the successful down, getting, what is a successful first down again? I'm so far out of football. Was it 50% of what you need? You need to get 5 yards on first down for success. There's different measures of this.
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah, 4 and
I think
change.
it's like, but yeah, to really to get to that 2nd and 5 again, you need 3 times as many yards on first down. It makes first down 3 times as hard. Like offensive holding is more penal than we think, and not calling that is huge boost to just not getting to 3rd down. So I think I was big on that. I guess I'd like to hear what Suma thought of the not only the explosion in scoring, but what he thinks this year will happen.
Yeah, what you mentioned, I think Rob put together some of those charts early in the year, and they were simply not calling holding, and there were some film guys who were consistently showing clips of all those holdings that were happening, but the refs were just not throwing a flag, and they also didn't call, I think, pass interference as frequently early in the season, and then we had a shift, I think, after a third of the season, something like that, where they were calling more aggressively. What I wanted to add was that I also think that over the past few years, there were some great articles, I think, about the Bucks in 2018, for example, where teams are putting a lot more emphasis on traveling, where they hire sleep scientists, travel scientists, just people who make it as comfortable as possible for teams to go on the road. They are suddenly adjusting their flight times and all that kind of stuff. So I think this is probably also a tiny little factor, but we have to assume that crowd noise will have a small impact. I just don't believe that we can say crowd noise is just noise. I think that we generally overvalue the crowd. I think crowd will be rocking guy was always high on that, but I think that we in general in the past have overvalued crowd noise, but I still think that there is some tiny signal to crowd noise, especially when we are talking about the, Superdome or the
indoors, for sure.
Yeah, Minnesota got brought up. Any of the domes, a couple of the just really good, crowd. Honestly, Buffalo's a good crowd.
Yeah.
I mean,
generally,
some of those teams
Arrowhead,
are good crowds.
Yeah.
I do wonder about Vegas now that they're it was a weird timing for them. They got their team, and then it became, oh well, we don't actually get to have anyone in the stadium, and maybe somebody who follows hockey more can speak to this. It felt like, man, there were some shitty hockey crowds. I mean, the team was good and the city got behind them, but it's like that's just the ultimate in an excuse to go to an away game. Like, I knew so many hockey fans are like, well, I'm going to a Wild game in Vegas. Like, why? What a perfect reason to talk my wife into letting me go to Vegas for a weekend. We're just going to go catch the hockey game. Like, yeah, probably no gambling or drinking. Just we love hockey so much. And you did see that a lot where it turned into like, and it'll be interesting to see because, God, I know San Diego is an awesome spot and a great travel spot too. But like we saw that in San Diego towards the end a little, and really in LA when they get to that soccer stadium. Remember that Pittsburgh game for the Chargers? That was awful. It was
Yikes.
I'm like, why do all the Chargers fans have terrible towels? This is bad. It's like that. There are some fan bases that just don't show up as well, and that'll be interesting.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Yeah, and I mean, I think you're going to have to take a very, very careful approach to home field advantage, particularly starting the season. I think you have to take a very careful approach to total betting earlier this season too. I think in general, the way that holding has been called through 1 week of preseason, I felt like was pretty aggressive, honestly. It was obviously a well talked about run for the unders in week 1 of preseason. I would like to see the statistics on offensive holding for the first units and second units, just out of curiosity, because just the handful of clips that I saw and handful of game action that I caught, I was like, boy, they're aggressively calling holding again, which, obviously is an auto under for, the early part of the season. I guess another macro trend I was curious to get Suma's take on. We have a consolidation of power going on in the AFC relative to the NFC. The NFC, you have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and a bunch of other teams. The AFC, you have the Chiefs clearly at the top, followed closely by the Bills, Ravens, and Browns, who we've already talked about. You can make a case that you have up-and-coming teams with some of these young quarterbacks as well in the AFC, in the Chargers, maybe the Dolphins, maybe
Titans don't fall off the, fall off. It
Close
depends how
enough.
that offense looks.
Close enough. But in general, like if you just look at the drafts over the last 3 or 4 years, Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Mac Jones, Joe Burrow, Tua, Herbert. I mean, almost all of these top tier QB1s in the first round have landed in the AFC on top of the guys that we talked about from 2018. Baker Mayfield hit. The Lamar Jackson was a hit. Josh Allen was a hit. How do we take this information of the AFC being potentially substantially stronger from top to bottom relative to the NFC and help provide the reasonable context as we go through this season? Have you thought about this at all? And do you agree that we are seeing sort of this huge imbalance of power where all the good teams are in the AFC all of a sudden?
I'm just staring at my power rating, and I have like a pretty wild distribution in the AFC. So there are like the 4 teams at the top, Chiefs, Ravens, Bills, and I also consider the Browns pretty good. But after that, there's a decent gap towards, let's say, the middle of the pack in the AFC. And it's very, very interesting. We had like a decade of the Patriots in the AFC and nobody else. And then we had a very strong NFC all the time. Let's say early 2010s, we also had Manning and the Broncos, but for the most part, it was pretty much top heavy in the AFC with one good team. And now it's, like you said, it's completely shifted. So that makes it very interesting. And yeah, as you mentioned, we have Trevor Lawrence, we have Mac Jones, and all of those guys. Zach Wilson, maybe Tua is good. We don't know. So that's a pretty heavy shift.
Maybe the better way to phrase the question is, how does Tom Brady do this?
Yeah, he goes to the NFC.
So to be honest, I think that this was probably still the most underrated part of the last season, just how well Tom Brady played, because it was just not the dink-and-dunk Patriots offense. He had the, I think, highest average depth of throw in the entire NFL, and he was slinging it down the field. It was it was ridiculous. And I think that was probably still very underrated for how he played last year.
Yeah. How about the bottom of your power rankings? Because my NFC power rankings, there are a lot of bad teams. As I look towards the bottom, it's a lot of NFC names, honestly. And, this imbalance of power should create, okay, as we sit here and we look at the futures market for the season, it's not a surprise that the Chiefs are expected to do well. It's not a surprise that the Bucs are expected to do well, right? But the way you make money betting the futures market preseason is finding those teams that exceed expectations by a decent amount, right? There will be some teams that overshoots their win total by 4 and 5 games. I think that because we have a lot more knowns about who's good and who's not good in the AFC relative to the NFC, that your surprises are probably going to be in the NFC. Is that, number one, is that a fair assessment? And then number two, who would you kind of tag as teams to watch?
Yeah, I think so, because for a team in the AFC to overperform like for 4 and 5 wins, we have like at least one of the top 4 to play badly, or let's say we need some quarterback injuries in the AFC, so that I think middle of the pack teams can really make some noise. Right now, I think that the power in the AFC is so crazily distributed that I don't really see a lot of options for middling teams to do very well and surprise us all, unless we have like an injury to Patrick Mahomes early in the season, or Lamar Jackson, or Josh Allen. So, for example, Bills in the AFC East, I think it can only take a injury to Josh Allen in order for any other team to come really close to them. In the NFC, I'm extremely high still against the market on the Falcons. I think the Falcons, I love Arthur Smith. I think that Matt Ryan and that combination of Calvin Ridley, who is running insane routes against the first string Dolphins cornerbacks today, Kyle Pitts, I think they have a not good offensive line, but I think they can be close to average. And I think that will be enough for Arthur Smith to orchestrate a top 10 passing attack. And I think what's really underrated, and I think what's really underrated about the Falcons is that their defense is bad, really bad on paper. However, they have a defensive coordinator who knows what he's doing. Dean Pease is coming out of retirement, and when he was coaching the Titans had a bad defense over the past couple of years, but they were pretty much average when he was coaching them, because he is blitzing from all areas on the field. He's calling DB blitzes, he's calling crazy fire zone blitzes, he's doing whatever he can to make opposing quarterbacks uncomfortable, especially on third down. And I think when you have a combination of a top 10 offense, maybe, and a defense, let's say, like the Chiefs last year, where we don't have great personnel, but someone like Steve Spags, who is calling some exotic blitzes, and that's just enough when you can play from in front. I think the Falcons can really surprise us all next year. And I see them as a borderline playoff team.
I love this. I love it. And I was hoping you were going to go there. I didn't know you were. But let me ask you a couple specific questions.
We had another
about
one
Arthur
too.
Smith.
Oh yeah, let's stick on Arthur Smith. I'll bring up another team after we talk Falcons.
The Titans overachieved last year to a degree. One of the handful of head-to-head wins I got against Suma, actually, was the Titans winning the South. He was on the Colts. I was on the Titans to begin the season, and I don't even really know if that was if I was right or wrong, but they win, so whatever. But ultimately, they had some cluster injuries on offensive line last year in Tennessee. They had a lot of replacement players that took a lot of meaningful snaps for that Tennessee Titans offensive line last year, and it didn't really impact their offense whatsoever. It didn't impact Derrick Henry's performance whatsoever. And I guess, is it fair to give Arthur Smith credit for that, or was that more of just a Tannehill and the way he operates? Was it on the quarterback, or can we give the offensive coordinator some shine? In that exact same vein, the Titans were a bottom 2 or 3 red zone team when Arthur Smith took over, and he made them a number 1 red zone team overnight. Okay. Was it something that he was doing specifically in terms of his concepts in the red zone, or again, was it more related to the personnel and the quarterback play in Tennessee? Because this affects hugely how you view Tennessee and Atlanta this year. If you take the guy that was responsible for all of their red zone success and you put him on a team in Atlanta who was miserable in the red zone under the previous regime. So, that one, if we're right, if Arthur Smith is bringing competent offensive line play out of replacement level players and red zone efficiency with him to Atlanta, like this could be way mispriced, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for the Titans, what it was basically a sum of all, so to speak. But I think that I would give Arthur Smith a huge amount of credit for that. I think Ryan Tannehill, he has never been a really bad quarterback. He had some really flashes in Miami. I think he had like one really terrible season. So we could say that Tannehill was maybe like a below average quarterback. And I think the combination of a great scheme, they had the highest rate of play action last season, and play action rocks. I think Tannehill had like 3 yards per pass more on play action attempts as he had on straight dropbacks. They had a solid skill position group with AJ Brown, Corey Davis, and Jono Smith. And I think that Arthur Smith just perfectly put everything into the right place. So I think it was in March or April, there was a very cool article on The Athletic about Arthur Smith. They interviewed him, and Smith basically said that his philosophy is be as aggressive and try to catch the defense on their heels as aggressively as possible. So he said that he wants to do things that the opposing defense is not expecting in possibly every situation. So they had like 3 specific outside zone runs and 2 play action bootlegs off of that. And then on the 3rd play action boot off of that, where it's the same formation, the same look, he will just pull a different guy from the offensive line, and the opposing defense is not knowing what to do. And I think that's really elite coaching, and I think it will take over really well in Atlanta as long as Matty Ice is not dying when throwing down.
He can't die. Yeah, and that's the biggest thing. You know, there was a bit of a knock on Art Smith from, honestly, I don't want to say people that just don't know what the hell they're talking about, but I can see where they're coming from. So, well, he had Derrick Henry, and Derrick Henry actually had a lot of yardage last year, but they used him in an efficient manner. And that would, the whole people that push back on analytics and say, well, you guys said running backs don't matter. No, running backs matter plenty. Having a really good, we just named a bunch of teams we like, and they have really good running backs like Cleveland, Baltimore's running game. It's used efficiently. It works right. Like just using running when it's non-efficient, running into 8-10 man boxes, stupid stuff like that, running on 2nd and long, running when it's not optimal, and then running out of running formations too. Like you just said, the biggest thing, and we've seen that with especially going back to Lamar, like a lot of Lamar's best runs are like spread formations. Like, hey, here's 4 wide receivers. What do you think we're gonna do? Well, we're gonna pass. Well, and then Lamar's down the field for 16 yards down the sideline.
The minute the backfield turns their back on him, he's gone.
Yeah, and it's stupid. It's like how play action. We've explained this before, but play action. You could have one of my kids out there at running back, and play action would still work. Like just the little twitch it takes because you see him, the quarterback turn his back to you and pretend to hand the ball off. Like it stops you for a second, no matter if the running game is good or not. Like misdirection and whatever else you want to call it, trying to fool them, that will always work. And that's what I love so much about Arthur Smith. And even I'm almost glad they don't have a good running back, because I think they have enough receivers to really turn this into like a serious aerial assault. And, he'll still be able to use all the play action, the pre-snap motion, misdirection, and, disguising things. That's the biggest thing. I love that. And I'm very hopeful that you're right. And I think the biggest point you hit on goes back to something that, and the numbers aren't as good this year. And I think that's partially his fault, but our friend Plus EV Analytics, Matt there, his article about, some of these alt win totals, if you really think you've found a team that can, because there are going to be teams. I mean, Drew, what was it? How many teams land within 1 or 2 games of their win total? It was not
like
many.
less than 8. It's like less than 8.
Yeah, it was like a quarter of the league will actually be close to their win total. If you think you've found a team, find a way to bet them on an alt win total. Like because if you're right, they're likely going to improve by 3-4 games over a win total, and you can make some series, and or even Dutch it as far as I'll play their win total for a bit, I'll play the alt win total for a bit, get some staggered winnings. So you just the righter you are, the more right you are, the more money you can make on being right on something like that. I do think the Falcons are a case for that, even though they are in a tough division.
Dude, what a great segue, because I had this specific question for Suma. if we have a misprice on a team, if we see the market is mispricing a team like the Falcons, for instance, we'll just use them as an example. What are the trade-offs between playing them on a win total bet to the over, which is a season-long bet and locks up bankroll for 5 months, it feels like, versus betting them game by game to start the season and scooping that value in multiple, being able to A, get more down, B, do it in a way that you can repeat and roll over your winnings accordingly. I mean, do you at all think of a team like the Falcons and think, if they surprise early, if they look good early, if this offense is clicking early, the market will be on it, right? We're not going to get a lot of bites at the apple? Or do you think of it more as, okay, people have gotten so burned by the Falcons for so many years, they're going to need to see it for many weeks before they really believe it?
Yeah, I mean, in the end, it's the Falcons, and I was listening to the PFF forecast today, and Eric Eager said, like, you will never lay more than 3 with the Falcons again.
Exactly that kind of thought process, right? Like, does that change your opinion of, well, rather than going super heavy on their win total over 7.5 or even their alt win total 8.5, I'm going to save my powder, and I'm just going to bet them week in, week out, because it's going to take a while for the general market makers to have the stones to get in bed with this team, considering what they've done to them over the last couple of years.
I think I will try to find a good mix. Like, it depends on how you can bet futures. If you can bet some futures on credit, it's a completely different discussion, in my opinion.
Sure.
So I would not want to tie my money. Well, I would not tie up a lot of money for futures, to be honest. But I would probably look to bet some Falcons on futures. Division, it was a very good price during the spring, but it was also a price because the Bucks are so superior over them, and I think it takes a Brady injury for the Falcons to come close to winning that division. But I think that if you can grab some solid numbers on the win total over, alternate win total over, maybe grab a little bit of that division price, maybe Matt Ryan MVP, which was 100-1 in March or April. And
Art
then
Smith,
combine
coach
it,
of the year, 25-1.
Yes, Arthur Smith, coach of the year. And then early in the season, you will
pen.
realize, you will just realize if you are above market on the Falcons, and then you still have some great opportunities to bet them on a week-to-week basis. Maybe they suck in week 1 against the Eagles, then it becomes even better.
Don't get my hopes up.
That was one of the other teams that we'd kind of talked about a little in the offseason, and now, especially from what I've seen in camp, I'm less excited. I know some smarter people, some people I've talked to, some people I listen to, and we even brought up a little that, like, Sirianni, coach of the year, isn't the dumbest bet, because the last time we saw the last time we saw the Eagles, they were losing a game hilariously on purpose. And at this point, with the house cleaning and starting over with a young quarterback probably, and just what they've become since their Super Bowl run, like, the expectations are low, and it's a division that could be ripe for the taking again. I might be off that. What have you? They're going to play. They play tonight, and I haven't heard great things about Hurts coming out of camp right now. And camp is usually pretty rosy. Like, they bullshit us. Where it's like, he threw a pick, but he had 2 really nice passes to the running back right after that. Like, well, yeah, I can make those. Like, they always try to cheer you up when they're talking bad about your players. Good, not great news out of Jets camp today, by the way, as a Jets fan.
Shoot me, please.
Yes, that's comes with being a Jets fan. But I mean, yeah. Do you have I guess the entire NFC East in general. Like, we kind of ran through that, and it's like, yeah, the Cowboys offense should be good, but we said that last year, and obviously cluster injuries are impossible to predict. And then Washington starting over with a super old quarterback. The Giants and Eagles are not that dissimilar. Like, hey, we have some decent pieces on defense, and we really don't know what we have at quarterback right now. So that's the one where, I don't know if there is a team that's like going to really, really outperform their expectations this year, unless it's one of the lower end teams that's like, okay, we can be good again. Like an Eagles. Like, I guess they're all kind of lower end teams, really, outside of how people think of the Dallas offense.
I think that the Eagles probably have the widest range of potential outcomes. They have I would call it a top 5, top 6 offensive line. They have an incredible right side. They could plug in Landon Dickerson at left guard, which could be an upgrade right away. Then they have that Australian left tackle, whose name I forgot, who had some really good reports out of training camp, who was getting first team reps. John Mailata, something like that. And then I think it entirely depends on the development of Jalen Hurts. Usually quarterbacks tend to get a lot better in their second years. Devontae Smith was killing it in practice camp early. They still have one of the better tight end tandems in the league. Chris Watkins is a guy they could maybe use in a variety of ways, like on screens, drag routes, sweeps, and stuff like that. And I think because of their offense, they really have a wide range of outcomes. So it's entirely possible that Jalen Hurts completely stinks and he doesn't improve as a passer at all. So they could have like the 29th offense in EPA per play. But it's also in the range of outcomes that they have like a top 5 running game with all those option runs, where Jalen Hurts is the 11th guy the defense has to defend. And they maybe find some ways to incorporate RPOs, play action stuff, and really can be a average passing attack. So I think if they are able to achieve that, then the Eagles might be in to exceed expectations. But it's really a wide range of outcomes. I think everything between the 10th overall offense, which is a small probability, and the 30th is probably much in play.
So what does Philadelphia Atlanta close total wise week 1? 51?
I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a 5 at the first digit.
Okay. I feel like I've talked myself into that position just through this conversation. I was eyeing it, but I've been a little gun shy to play overs just because.
We said it earlier in the show. We were looking at early season unders. But you can't just play them blindly.
I know it. Yeah. I already played that your New York Jets over. Let's talk about the Jets and some rookie quarterbacks real quick. Jets look like a team that are going to surprise offensively as well. We're kind of on this theme here. You subtract an Adam Gase and you add a human being with a pulse, you immediately upgrade your scheme. We know that.
Yes.
On top of that, it looks like Zach Wilson has all the tools to succeed at the NFL level. And they have populated a team around him that can protect his blind side. And they have added weapons to what was previously a team that had virtually no realistic ways to create offense. Corey Davis, obviously, Keelan Cole, obviously, on top of the drafting of Elijah Moore, who's had a nice start to camp. Do you have an expectation that this Jets team will overperform offensively? And considering the potential loss of a Carl Lawson and a defense that's not going to have anyone good in the coverage, are the Jets an over team?
Oh, yes, for sure. I think that we could grab some really great total numbers early in the season with the Jets. I mean, Quinton Williams hasn't practiced since, I think, April or March in early OTAs. Sheldon Rankins went down today. Carl Lawson went down today, which doesn't sound like he will be back in week 1. You have arguably the worst cornerback group in the entire league. You basically only have one solid player in the secondary. You have CJ Mosley, who hasn't played for 2 years now. I think the defense could really, really stink, like bottom 3 kind of defense without a pass rush. And it depends on Zach Wilson. I think the same applies for the Jets. I have a very low prior on them, extremely low prior, but I will happily adjust early in the season. Don't have any issues with that. But right now they really look like the offense has to score like 30 points a game to grab some W's.
Honestly, Andy, this is my favorite bet for week 1, and it's not close. Over 43 in Carolina versus the Jets. You're only going to get one chance in your entire life to bet the Adam Gase effect on both sides of the football.
That's. I mean, we don't know. Like, he'll still get jobs. It's the NFL. Nepotism is built in. But I mean, yeah, we talked about I think we might have talked about this game during both the Jets and the Carolina one. Like, it feels low. And if this defense is gonna, if the only good thing really that they brought into this defense, one of two good things, is not going to be around, this defense really, really might stink. This is like, I wonder if they have comeback player of the year up throughout the season. I'm not sure if that's a market that gets put up week in and week out. It might just be preseason, because that's one where it's like, okay, now you should have Darnold now, and then you can sell by picking up somebody else the next week, because Darnold legitimately might look pretty good. So I'm there with you. I think we're pretty much in agreement on this. And then I hate to be like, hey, injuries, but if the Lawson thing is serious enough where he's not playing, that's just cherry on top. And I think this total should probably creep to the other side of 45.
Here's the thing about Darnold. We don't know, really. Suma's probably watched more Darnold than we have, so we should probably defer to his opinion here. But I want to blame a lot of this on Gase, a lot of it. And putting him with Joe Brady, you're going to get better play out of him, period. There's Joe Burrow, obviously married with Joe Brady, became a Heisman winning quarterback when he entered the season with a prior that was like college football average, right? And I would expect that you're going to get better, and oh, by the way, he's got a great set of weapons. This wide receiver core, assuming it stays healthy, of course, DJ Moore went down today too, but that's beside the point. DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson, these guys rock. Like, those are great wideouts, and especially for this system. So I definitely think that Carolina, Terrace, I forgot about Terrence Marshall. He's looking outstanding.
Yeah.
So this is a group that is going to be able to pass the football, in my opinion, especially earlier in the season, going up against some soft secondaries. You get Jets week 1. You get Saints week 2. Saints, is Lattimore suspended? I'm guessing he is, but I don't know that for sure. They don't have a second cornerback anyway. You get Houston week 3. You get Dallas week 4. You get Philly week 5. That is 5 straight passing defenses that you can absolutely get separation against. And yeah, the Panthers' offensive line holds up. Darnold's going to look real good come the middle of October, when all of a sudden he's going to go up against some tougher passing defenses like the Giants and the Patriots. So it's going to be really fun to bet the Panthers this year, both ways, I think, to outperform expectation scoring wise early, and then to come back hard against them when they go up against the likes of the Giants and the Pats. Are you with me that the Giants are a top 5 potential defense?
I think
it's lofty.
Top 10.
They have some really I think top 10 is probably possible, but I think they have some really great pieces on the secondary, and somehow Dave Gettleman, I don't know how he did it, but he somehow signed some really good players. They are basically a 3 deep at safety: James Bradbury, Adoree Jackson. A great scheme from Patrick Graham. I really think that Graham will be one of the hottest coaching candidates next January. But what concerns me is that they might switch to more man coverage this year, because he thinks that he has the cornerbacks. In their first preseason game, he played a lot more man than he did last year. I think last year they were like the heaviest zone teams in the league. They didn't blitz a lot. He just tried to confuse opposing quarterbacks with lots of stunts and stuff like that, and crazy looks up front. Basically, every snap they have a different look, but they still don't really have that pass rushing quality on their defensive line. So I think that it's a unit that has some really intriguing pieces, but a lot of things have to go right for them, is probably what I'm thinking. And they need Patrick Graham to scheme the hell out of it.
Well, he's going to have a lot of chances because they have Jason Garrett coordinating the other side of the football. So they're going to be put in a lot of dicey situations. I want to go back real quick to rookie quarterbacks. The offensive rookie of the year market is going to be the Wild West this year. It is going to be overreaction city every week in, week out. There's no doubt in my mind this is a quarterback award this year, and you are probably best off just getting the best possible price on all 5 of these guys.
I was just going to say last night when you spoke about the Ravens, we were fine. We were actually fine. Anyone who hasn't watched yesterday's, we were fine adding the Ravens as a Super Bowl team later on after they get through the first part of the season. Yeah. And Drew had the plan. He has a group of teams already that he plans on trying to create, a negative margin by picking them off at the right time, whether it be preseason or not. I think there's probably, I don't know if all 5 have a shot, but there's probably a decent chance that I'll have rookie of the year bets on at least 3 of these quarterbacks at certain points in the season. And I'm kind of mapping that out too. I mean, just between the 3 of us, is there with this many quarterbacks that are going to get this much opportunity, which is number one on the ingredient list on the back of the can of rookie of the year's opportunity, for there even to be a chance for a running back or a wide receiver to be like, it would have to be such an outlier season.
All 5 have to suck.
Yeah, it would be very, very difficult with the amount of opportunity they'll get.
All 5 have to get the chance to play a lot and suck in order for it to go to a non-quarterback. Because if 4 of them suck, then the 5th guy's going to get it.
Yeah, he gets it.
So
you win.
It is, exactly. Suma, what have you seen so far? I guess, are you enjoying sort of the narrative around the rookie quarterbacks that is sort of dominating the preseason coverage, or do you think this is a bunch of nonsense?
It's probably lots of nonsense, and we were overreacting like shit last weekend, but it was also so much fun to finally watch some preseason football again and watch some really exciting rookies take the field. So I really enjoyed it, even though the overreactions were pretty heavy on Monday morning. I think that Trey Lance is probably in the best situation because he's playing on the best team with the best coach. Yep. They have the best set of skill position players since Kyle Shanahan has arrived. And I think it's 50-50 whether he or Garoppolo start in week 1, but I don't think that will take very long for Lance to take over. And then we have the potential of like a, let's say, 800 rushing yards, 7 rushing touchdowns, 20 passing touchdowns kind of season with a team that will, I'm very high on the 49ers. I also bet them to win the division back in May, I think, with a team that's most likely going to win double-digit games. And that should be the, I think, best narrative for all those offensive rookie of the year voters, in my opinion, because I think Trevor Lawrence will play a lot from behind. He won't be on a good team. I think the Jags have a wide range of outcomes because that division is bad, and there's a chance that the Colts won't have a quality starting quarterback this year. Titans might suck and regress in some areas. The Texans might go 0-17. So the Jags have a wide range of outcomes. But I think the situation and the environment that Trey Lance is in is so much better. There's such a huge gap to us, the other guys. I think yesterday I saw 8-1 for him for the rookie of the year. I think that's a pretty solid grab because
that's where I hope he doesn't start. Like I hope he doesn't start the season.
Because you want a better number?
Because I agree with everything Suma said. Like out of the 5 teams, like they're the team probably with the best chance to have a good record, make the playoffs as a wild card, and build the narrative that way. But if he doesn't play week 1 and you get the presumptive favorite going up against the Texans, go light them up, then everybody's number gets better. Even if they all 5 start week 1, like I would think after week 1, you still get a worse number than before week 1 on Trevor Lawrence, just because of the matchup and the fact that you get to play the Texans right off the bat. I mean, the Jets one, I guess it could be a decent showing against Carolina, especially if it's an over game and you can't play defense just because they gave up, a bunch to Darnold. That's not on Mr. Wilson. So a couple of decent matchups week 1. I don't think Fields starts the season because of just how Chicago is the hand they've been dealt and how they got to do things to keep their jobs is kind of forcing them to like, hey, let's play Andy for a couple weeks, and then we can be the heroes who, hey, we brought Fields in now, like we're gonna save the season, guys. I don't know who decided to start Andy Dalton. That was dumb. We're here now, but yeah, like I don't know. I don't have a good read on San Fran. I think Mac
I don't
might
really
start,
either.
man. If Mac Jones looks good tonight, I think you might close the book on that competition.
Yeah, I could see that too. And I'm nervous too. I mean, Lance is so obviously the correct decision. They have an extended preseason because they got back-to-back East Coast games against the Lions and the Eagles. They get to stay at the Greenbrier in between. So they basically get a whole extra week of camp that no one else gets. Use that to develop your guy, man. Get him out there early. Don't fiddle fuck around with Jimmy Garoppolo this year. But at the same time, like, so many parts of the process of drafting Lance in the first place up to this point of starting have been like, it feels like they're kind of playing it by ear, right? I mean, it feels like they're making this up as they go, doesn't it?
And the thing is too, like, if I'm running any of these franchises, if I'm a fan of these franchises, I want all these rookies playing all 4 quarters of every preseason game and starting week 1. Like, I want to see what they can do. Like, but I really don't. With the 3 of these franchises, if Cam played, wouldn't surprise me. Andy's going to play. If Garoppolo started the season, wouldn't surprise me. We don't know what we're doing. It's a big jump from where he played up to NFL right off the bat. They might want to ease him in. I'm not sure. They've been a little clandestine in nature, especially before the draft and stuff. They're good at putting information out there that isn't always true. So
here's the thing.
I'm not sure what happens.
Here's the thing. The club of teams that can win the Super Bowl this year is small. It's elite. It is an elite group who can realistically win the Super Bowl this year. If you are starting a first-year quarterback this year, you're not winning the Super Bowl. You're not going to win 3 playoff games. You're not going to win a Super Bowl on the road. It's not happening. So you need to get as much information as possible about your rookie quarterback as soon as possible, so that you can make correct decisions about what to do with his rookie contract and the rest of your roster around him. And so there's really, like, even if you say, well, it's not fair to throw Fields out there against the Rams week 1 and the Browns week 3 with that terrible offensive line. Yeah, he's probably going to look bad, but you need to see how he performs under pressure. There's 2 sides of that coin. And same thing for Mac Jones. Cam Newton's not winning you an AFC East, Bill. He's not. Mac Jones might not either, but you need to find out if he can win you an AFC East next year or the year after that or the year after that.
Something different, yeah.
Or do you need to do something different?
Making decisions is based on the information you have. And if you sit him half a season, you have less information.
Tua,
you're going to make a
look
worse
what the Dolphins
decision.
did with Tua last year. Tua got no reps in all of preseason because of his injury. And they were a team that could have gotten a playoff spot, could have gotten their reps, some playoff. They took
Fitzpatrick out when he was playing well.
They took Fitzpatrick, yes, because they needed to see.
So proud of them.
They needed to see it, and Brian Flores did an amazing job of managing egos in the locker room in that situation. But that was the right way to do things, and I think these other franchises will eventually get there. I just don't have a ton of confidence that they're there yet, which is frustrating. So, yeah, Rookie of the Year market is going to be wild.
Have you read the Athletic article from Robert Mays on Ryan Fitzpatrick? If
no.
I highly recommend it. Mays visited him at his house in Arizona, and he was talking about all his last teams. And he and Chen Gailey were interviewed, and Chen Gailey basically said that there was no plan for Tua to start at all. They didn't even have an offense for Tua when Flores decided to go with Tua. They basically just had the bye week to get anything going on offense that fits his strength. There was no plan to start him at all. Crazy.
Wow.
And quickly back to Trey Lance. I mean, we can't overreact to preseason and practice reports. We just cannot. Yeah? But, I mean, Zach Wilson, up and downs, 11 of 27 in the scrimmage. Justin Fields throwing some nice balls. Trevor Lawrence looking solid, blah, blah, blah. And with Trey Lance, I mean, if you just check Matt Lombardi's beat writer of the Niners, when you check his timeline, he said that they have reached a point where Trey Lance against the second string defense was unfair. It was just not football anymore. It was just basically someone carving up that whole defense, throwing touchdowns on every second play. And they really say it was unfair. So I have rarely seen these crazy practice reports, to be honest.
Okay. So did you fill out the poll that Noops put up of what week everybody starts?
No.
You didn't? What's your guess? What's your guess for?
I was gonna put that out to Twitter and make them decide for me.
What'd you do, Andy?
I didn't fill it. I told them.
I'll tell you my answers. You didn't do the contest? Are you serious? Oh come on.
That's how you get doxxed.
What are you talking about? People aren't going to be able to figure. There are a lot of Mulders in Minnesota. That's fair.
That's fair.
Okay. All right. Well, I for the record, I think you see.
Do you want my answer?
No, for the record, you see Wilson and Lawrence week 1.
Yep.
You see Lance late. I think I picked. Well, I'll go with Lance last. You're going to see Fields week Lance. 4. I think you see Fields week 4. I think you see Jones week 5 against Houston after the Tampa Bay embarrassing. Whatever embarrassment happens when Tom Brady goes to Foxborough for his last ever game in Foxborough, you'll see Mac Jones the next week, and then San Francisco. I think it's going to be about week 8. I don't think it's going to be early at all. I think they're gonna pull the trigger after the bye, week 7. I'll say off the bye week 7 against Indianapolis is when you see Trey Lance the first time, and I hope that it's sooner, but I'm not getting the feeling that they are moving fast enough there. So, well.
I'd go with Niners last 2, and I wasn't in this spot a couple weeks ago, or even maybe last week, but I think you might see Mac Jones before you see Justin Fields, which would be not how life or the universe should work, but I'm starting to lean that way.
Do you want Mac Jones hosting Tom Brady on Sunday Night Football?
Do you think Belichick cares?
I think it matters for the development of Mac Jones a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know if he thinks like that though. He's a weird android who doesn't care. He's like, no, Mac Jones needs to be out there where he's our guy, and he's going to be our starting quarterback now, and we're on to Tampa Bay.
Okay.
I would say Mac Jones last. I just don't see how Belichick goes to Mac Jones early in the season. I think that Cam Newton behind a top 5 offensive line with some weapons and with a good defense, I think they can really win some games. And then I just don't see Belichick putting the trigger and trotting out Mac Jones for no reason if they're playing well. If they're playing well. And Justin Fields, I think, will also take some time because what Andy said, Bears could have the worst offensive line in the league. They already said Sam Darnold, Andy Dalton will start in week 1. And if he gets crushed, I don't think that you go so quickly to Justin Fields. And Trey Lance, I think 50-50 week 1, and I wouldn't be surprised if we saw him in week 1.
And Justin Fields is a competitor, but if he sees Andy Dalton take like 4 sacks and 11 hits in week 1,
dude, he's just going to be staring down Allen Robinson and getting sacked.
Doesn't he suddenly develop like a sore hamstring and practice the next week? Like, guys, I'm not sure I'm ready yet. Like, I don't want to go do that. I used to play last year. I played for a good team. This sucks.
Yeah, no, he's ready to take the mantle.
Yeah, I know.
After the first couple weeks, so okay. Let's put a book. Let's close the book here. I was going to say
change the name of the podcast too.
Yeah, let's close the book on the AFC with the following questions. I have not bet on the Bills or the Chiefs to do anything this year yet. Even though those are without question, as we stand here today, the 2 best quarterbacks in the conference with the 2 best coaching staffs generally. Why? Why not? What am I rating
correctly?
They're priced correctly? Is that it? Is that all?
I think they're priced. I think we made some points on places we could jump in and reasons to jump in, but like right now, yeah, I think there's better value on the board, and like, why do we want to tie things up?
Have you bet the Bills at all, Suma?
I bet I'm doing their
No,
division.
I was patiently waiting for KC to drop to 12. I think it was 12.5 plus 120 at Chris a couple of weeks ago, and I thought, man, give me the 12, because I would have fired on the over, because even though I think simulated number is right there, like 12, 12.3 or something like that. I mean, it's still the Chiefs, and that probably need a Patrick Mahomes injury to not win 14 games, if that makes sense. So that range of the shape of the distribution is so fat and wide to the right side in the double digits. I just think that they need some bad luck to go like 11-6 or something like that.
Wait, for the Bills or for the Chiefs?
For the Chiefs.
Are they going to be the first team to buck the Super Bowl hangover trend?
Who's the best losing Super Bowl coach, non-Belichick, in the last few years? I guess we got to give McVay a bit of a nod.
No, they went 9-7 the year after they lost the Super Bowl. They undershot their win expectation by a lot. They had the highest. They were the number 1 power number heading into that season, and they undershot their.
I'm saying you should give him. That's what I'm saying. Like, I have a lot of respect for McVay, and they still had the Super Bowl. They still had the Super Bowl hangover. That's what I'm saying. That was a good coach, good team. Still had the hangover. Like, you can't just say it's Andy Reid and they won't, because you don't know that.
The Patriots, after losing the Super Bowl, bounced back the following season and won the Super Bowl. But they did so going 11-5, and they did not make their win total. You have the Falcons coming off of a Super Bowl loss to the Patriots, who made the playoffs but lost to the Eagles. The Panthers coming off of a Super Bowl loss, not make the playoffs. There's been some pretty clear and obvious examples of losing the Super Bowl and not really performing well the following season, although it's been less of a trend lately than it used to be. It used to be like kiss of death. You lost the Super Bowl, you were going to suck the next year. There's obviously nothing to it other than qualitative speculation, but why are the Chiefs so good that they don't warrant any consideration of regression coming off of a Super Bowl loss?
I just think that you can't really predict any regression with that offense unless there are some major injury hits, is what I would say. So all the teams that you have described, we can go back and find some pretty obvious reasons why they might have regressed. I mean, the Rams lost half their offensive line, basically. The Falcons lost Kyle Shanahan. The Panthers were riding 34 turnovers on defense, and Cam was just like the 9th best passer that year. But we are just talking about the best offense in football that got better in the offseason because they have at least top 10 offensive line this year. And I would probably make the case that they have the best offensive line since Patrick Mahomes took his first regular season snap.
It's not a bet you want to look back on and be like, I just bet against maybe the best quarterback we might ever see.
I would bet against them. I'm just curious why.
No. Well, if you say I want to bet on the regression, you're betting a season win total under, I would suppose, or betting on other teams to win the Super Bowl. There's different ways to go about it. But like, if you did take that route and say, well, I think they end up with 11 wins then because of some regression, and you look back on it when they're like 10-1 or something, you're like, oh, I bet against that guy. Like, that was dumb. With an improved offensive line and the geniuses that are putting that offense together and executing it, I'm not interested in that. If they regress, they regress. I don't see a high enough probability of it to put money on it on a 50-50, like a win total.
What was your major takeaway of why the Chiefs ultimately were not a bet-on team to cover down the home stretch last year? And obviously, they lost the Super Bowl for some very specific reasons that are well understood. But they only scored 9 points.
Yeah, those injuries, especially the one in the AFC title game, that sucked. Like, that sucked because I think just from a fan standpoint, we should have had a better game. And the improvement on the offensive line should take care of a lot of that. But yeah, the non-covering thing, I didn't really have an explanation for that, man. They were just, I think they don't care. Like Andy Reid doesn't care if you win by 10 or 3 when the last touchdown is not really putting you in danger. Like, it's not like, oh man, now they're only up by 3 and there's 10 minutes left. It's like, oh, they're up by 3 and they have the ball and they're just gonna run it out again.
Why does everybody make such a big deal about the Browns winning 1-score games when the Chiefs were 1-score game-winning machines? Yeah.
Because, and 1-score games need context, like I just said. 1-score games where you kicked a field goal to win by 2 with no time on the clock and it was from 55 yards is not the same as you winning by 6 with a team scoring a meaningless touchdown as time expired. The context needs to go there, and I don't think we have all of it in front of us. But a lot of those Chiefs games were well in hand that they won by 1 score. Saints game, for example.
Yeah, Suma, is Andy Reid calling the good plays against the good teams and calling the shit plays against the bad teams, saving the good plays for the good teams?
So yes, especially when we saw that Ravens game last year in week 3, I guess. Where we saw some really wild stuff at the goal line. But what I wanted to add is that I think that the Chiefs had one specific problem last season, and that was that they could not run to save their lives on short downs. So on 3rd and 4th and medium or more, so obvious passing downs on 3rd or 4th down, they were like, I think, the first or best or second best team in the league in terms of efficiency. But on 3rd and short or 4th and short, they were 21st, I think, in DVOA. So they could not run the ball. A major part was that their offensive line could not block very well on those short downs. And now, during the offseason, they just said, fuck it all. We are going to grab 4 new offensive linemen, all pulling guys, basically guys that come out of a gap scheme. They were running tons of zone runs until last season, and now they are going to switch to a gap run scheme with lots of pulling guys. And I also read a nice article, I don't know who it was, but someone explained that if you use RPOs with a pulling guard, so with a gap scheme instead of a zone scheme, it makes it harder for linebackers to read the player and to read his keys, because when you see a pulling blocker, it's tougher to assume that it's actually going to be a pass. So I think that this is some of the wrinkles that Andy Reid saw last year and said, we are going to switch our offense. We are going to run a ton more power stuff, power RPOs, and we are just trying to get Joe Thuney, Orlando Brown, and Trey Smith, who could be the absolute steal of the draft, and just try to overpower guys on short downs. And if they just go from, let's say, 21st on short downs to like 10th, that will keep a lot more drives alive, and that will also take care of covering a lot more.
I'm trying to wrap my head around. So you're saying when you have a pulling guard, often, I don't want to say almost always, but a pulling guard pulling to that side, it's usually going to be a run play to that side. You're getting the extra guard over there. But if you run some mesh play or an RPO, and the linebackers key on that guard and come up, your tight end is just sitting right there wide open in that first, that right behind them in any sort of zone scheme. Or if it was man-to-man, he's clearly lost his man at that point.
Yeah.
I can't see that. I can't see the Chiefs being able to pull off complicated offense like that to a T. But I'm with you there. They're
going to need a good tight end to make this work.
They're going to need a tight end. That's what they're going to need.
Okay, no, I'm just being silly. I guess if it doesn't work out for the Chiefs, short of injury, if it doesn't work out for the Chiefs this year, if they're underwhelming, if they're in a fight for their lives to win the AFC West with the likes of the up-and-coming Chargers and Broncos, what went wrong?
So if the Chiefs, let's say, not make the playoffs, or
it's coming on to January, and we're like equal top of the standings, 11-3, 10-4, 10-4 between the Chiefs, Chargers, and Broncos, and it's not clear that they're going to get the home game in the playoffs. Like, what is it that what is it that went wrong for these guys?
I would say that their defense is probably so bad that they're going to lose some shootouts. That would probably be my best explanation, aside from obvious injury stuff or something like that.
Okay. So rather than losing games like they lost the Super Bowl 31-9, they're going to lose games like they lost the Raiders game. What was the Raiders game? 40.
They had trouble with the
32?
Raiders, man. You know what? The Raiders and the Chargers give them problems, which is an issue because that's 4 of their games. But it's, I'm not cheering against the Chiefs, but I would love to see a competition there between at least 2 of those teams in the West. That'd be fun.
Yeah,
cool.
For sure. Okay, so it sounds like you're eventually going to bet Kansas City before the season. Or you missed the best of numbers, so you're going to pass?
Probably yes. I would laugh if I could get some 12 minus 110 or something like that. Or maybe for whatever reason they lose against the Browns in week 1 and we might grab.
Wouldn't that be a shame?
That'd be a damn shame. Well, but then we grab the Ravens as well.
Yes, Ravens. Yes, right. Yeah. What if they're 0-2? What if they're 0-3? You see their first 3 games?
No.
Browns, Ravens, Chargers.
Okay, so
that you're gonna find out how good this defense is real quick.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, 3 potential top 10 offenses. So we might already see some crazy shootouts where they might drop a game or 2. It's not impossible.
So,
but then we can smash them.
Mahomes for MVP is the number that I'm the most excited about because I think you just said the secret word, which is shootout. There's going to be a lot of shootouts on their schedule. They're playing a ton of deep.
People like to see in their highlights. Shootouts.
Oh yeah, guess what? You want to see someone break a single season record by a magnitude that you didn't think was possible? Wait till you see what Pat Mahomes' passing yards and passing touchdowns look like this year. It is going to be absolutely insane and stupid. They go up against a lot of teams that have high-powered offenses up and down this schedule here. God damn. In fact, the only team that is going, there are only 2 teams that I see on this schedule that are going to struggle to score against the Kansas City Chiefs, and it is the New York Giants and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Everyone else, I think, is going to be able to hang 30 on these guys, and the game's going to be in the balanced slate a lot. Pat Mahomes is going to have a lot of, can you believe he made that play highlights to win games? He's going to win the MVP ultimately, but I think you're going to get a better price in October than you can get right now. That's my bet.
Yeah. So I 100% agree. I think if you want to bet the Chiefs, it's absolutely worth waiting, in my opinion. So,
what is the probability off the top of your head that the Chiefs are 1-4 after the schedule of Cleveland, Baltimore, Chargers, Eagles, Bills?
2%.
No, it's not 2%. Come on,
2%.
No, it's not. Come on.
It's 4 at the most. I said 4.
Okay. So
just call 4 of those games coin flips if you want. That gets you down to 6% if the 4 are coin flips, and they're not coin flips. They should
tell you
be,
what the actual probability is. You think
go with money lines. It's 2 to 4. I think we found the range. If they're all coin flips, it's 6.25. And they're not coin flips, for certain. Are you doing money lines right now?
Yeah.
We already went well over our hour.
Oh, I do have 2%. 2.6.
Weird.
Okay.
Oh.
Right.
Yeah, he says. Yeah, he's German. He's got a calculator right up there.
It's a higher probability than that though, because there's some correlation. There's some correlation. If the defense is not as good as the market expects, then these money lines are not correctly priced.
Yeah, you can double
some better variance. Also.
Yeah, right. Yep.
Deviance.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Well, that was a ton of fun. I'm glad we ended on the Chiefs because I really am excited to see what this. I mean, the season is going to be the season feels competitive. This doesn't feel like last season where it felt like, the Chiefs are going to win again. Let's just crown their ass already. And then ultimately Tom Brady wins the Super Bowl for the 9th time. Go figure.
Question to you guys. How do you see the game playing out with this year's offensive line?
I think Tampa Bay takes a similar lead and the Chiefs come back and win.
Just in so many words, more scoring probably by both teams.
35-31.
Yeah, like it's a Rams-Chiefs game.
Yeah, right. It's a classic Tom Brady, Pat Mahomes affair.
Yeah.
Team with the ball last wins.
Because Tampa Bay didn't have to do that, and they'd be forced to do that, and they could do that, and coin flip, first team to 35. Yeah,
35-31ish, something like that. And I think the Chiefs were absolutely allowed to come back in that one if they had an offensive line.
Mm-hmm.
So, although the defense played good that day. That Tampa Bay defense played out of their minds good that day. So
it was a Murphy Bunting kind of playoffs. That was my favorite.
I'm more impressed ultimately. I didn't make any money on the Bucs last year at all, winning the Super Bowl. I know Suma did, but I just didn't believe in my heart that they could go and win 3 games in a row on the road in the NFC playoffs, and they made it look easy. So,
thanks, LaFleur.
To be fair, when I placed the bet, I didn't think about 3 road games, to be honest.
You thought they were going to win the South? You thought they were going to catch the Saints?
Gotta get some luck sometimes.
Yeah. Okay.
That's fair.
Out. All right. Well, good job. Let's put a bow.
Put a bow on
this
it.
Episode.
Let's let Suma go to bed.
Man. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate that.
It's got to be like 10:30
Where can people find your outstanding comment? Let the people know if you want more of this type of high level discussion of NFL. If you want a guy that can pull win probabilities for 5 games off the top of his head and get within 0.6%, where can people find you?
Obviously on Twitter at SUUMA810, not W. I sell picks. I do some analysis around that in my Slack channel. You can sign up at football-handicapping.com. And you will also see Drew, Rob, and me, and Sully on the Matchbook podcast every week during the regular season. Wednesday, I think it's 10 a.m. Eastern time. Those
definitely
are
in the morning.
Yeah. We promised more disagreement this year. It was fun when we were oppo on a couple last year.
Yeah.
I think Suma got the better of me a couple of times.
Almost every time.
There was a couple that I for sure had the right side, like the Chiefs against the Saints. That one.
we might have to pull that rant and just post it this year, just as a instant, like when they went on the football channel.
There was a couple of soft performances that got the better.
That was a Sunday night one. I'm gonna go find that.
When
they on the on the NFL Network where they show the world, the best games, or the MLB shows some instant classics. Like Drew's Chiefs rant might have to get pulled. So,
the funny part is Suma got a winner and I got a push, and I was still mad.
That was the maddest I've ever seen.
You had 3.5, and I had -3, and I was super mad. So, anyway,
that was one of the luckiest pushes last year.
You got to win.
I think I had 3.5.
Yeah, you had 3.5. I'm sure you did. Yeah. All right. Well, best of luck this season, and we will catch up with you on the Matchbook Show. Take it easy, buddy.
See you soon.
Thanks for having me, guys. Bye-bye.